Hello, friends, and welcome to another RobCast. And this one has been in the works for months. And Beth Fukumoto is here. Beth, welcome to the RobCast.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
All the way from Hawaii.
Yes.
Beth is the youngest female caucus leader in America.
In America,
A state legislator from the great state, the 50th state,
50th
Hawaii.
state, yes.
And she and I have had some fascinating conversations about politics. The first time we met, I was like, oh, the RobCast people are going to love her. So let's start. You grew up in Hawaii.
I grew up in Hawaii, yes.
Then you went to college in, I want to say, New York?
Georgetown. No, so my mom's from New York, but I went to college at Georgetown in D.C. To study English literature. Yeah.
Oh, did you really?
I did, yeah. Not politics at all.
And then after you went back to Hawaii.
I went back to Hawaii because it was the recession. So I was going to go get my PhD because I wanted to be a writer and a professor. And so I decided I'd just go back to Hawaii for a little bit before I took out student loans, right? During the recession, it was a terrible time to take out loans, and ended up working at the legislature. That's how I got involved.
This is the classic case where when you find out what people are doing and then you find out what they studied and majored in.
Oh, yeah.
No correlation.
Nothing at all. No.
You were going to be a writer and a professor.
Yeah. I want to argue critical thinking is important in politics, or should be more important.
Should be
than
more
maybe
important,
it
yes.
is. And you get that from English literature.
Ah, good point.
Yeah.
So you get a job in state legislature.
Filing papers. That was my job.
How old are you at this point?
26, master's degree. My job was filing papers.
Like literally, these go in the V section, these go in the L section.
Yes. It was bill numbers, so I had to put them in order, like 2,000 bills in order every day. That was it, just putting them in order.
Did you get into it and think this is so boring?
So what I ended up doing was just listening to people talk around me. I was in the research department filing papers. So I was listening to researchers talk about why people were passing certain bills and why sort of the politics behind all the measures. And nobody pays attention to the person filing papers. So you just overhear everything. And it got me interested.
Because it's almost like you're getting behind the veil, behind the curtain.
Right.
And seeing how a state or how government actually works.
Yep.
And were you seeing things where you thought, that's crazy?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, people were saying all sorts of things where I just thought, really, that's why this person is voting no on this bill because they don't like this other person? This is crazy. This is how, and I had stayed away from politics just because I wasn't all that interested. But once I started hearing this, I just thought this is, I mean, I think the word that always came to mind was just unjust. It just didn't seem like right to be doing it like that.
Did you see money being spent in all sorts of ways?
Yeah, I think, that was the other thing is how much wealth really influences the political process. And that bothered me quite a bit too, quite a bit.
But because you're a paper filer, people are saying stuff in front of you.
All kinds of stuff.
Not knowing that you're soaking it all in.
Yeah. And I was maybe a politician before my time. I knew to put like headphones in, like pretend I was filing stuff, but I could hear through the, So people are just ignoring me, but I was like, oh, this is
interesting.
How long?
So you do this job, and how long are you into this job, and then what happens?
I did it for about a year, and I ended up becoming an office manager for one of the representatives. Again, just because I needed a job, and from there got to know a little bit more about the process.
Paper.
Right, yeah. And so then I started dealing with his constituents, right? And people would call for all sorts of things. There's a crack in my sidewalk outside, or don't raise my taxes, or whatever it is. And then from there, ended up being the director of that department that I was filing papers in. So at some point, I became like the director of research and was studying all the bills, which is fun.
And you do that, and then at some point, you're like, we can do more here.
Yeah, I think, and I don't know at what part of the process, maybe it was even in filing papers that I finally just thought, you know what? I think the biggest thing is that there weren't enough voices. Like I was watching the legislature thinking, okay, well, I'm in a state that's 93% controlled by one party.
And which is Democrat. 93% Democrat, 7% Republican.
And I was
and you don't have any affiliation.
Not at that point.
You don't care.
No. But in this research department, I had gotten in this funny side story. When I had applied for the job, I thought minority research was like ethnic minorities. And I was like, hey, I'm Japanese. Like, I can work here. And so I applied, and not realizing it meant Republican, but started working there being like, whoa, these people are like way outnumbered. And that's not cool. Like, I always I like underdogs. So
Right.
I didn't like that they were so outnumbered. And
So it wasn't at that point. It wasn't an affiliation with a Democratic or a Republican set of ideas or values. It was this 93% group dominates this 7%
yeah.
group.
Yeah, and I didn't feel like that represented the state well because I didn't think the state was that strongly in one party. It just or that strongly partisan in general, but somehow this one party dominated everything across the state. And listening and seeing what the effects of that were, that there was really no dialogue. When somebody would have an idea, everybody would just say, "Yeah, okay, that's a good idea," because they were all one party, but nobody was ever arguing for an alternative perspective, and that bothered me.
Because they talk about the need for a loyal opposition
Right.
is not to bog it down or to create bureaucratic red tape.
Yeah.
The reason why you need, like in a marriage or a family or business or anything, you need somebody going, is this the best way to spend that money? Is
Right.
this the best?
Right.
And you saw what happens when there's no loyal
When there's
opposition.
nothing, yeah, or when the loyal opposition is only a group of people that just says no all the time. Like they don't even think about it. They're just like, no, this is a Democrat idea, so I'm going to vote no because I'm a Republican. So I was also not crazy about the Republicans necessarily because I looked
Right.
at it and thought, you guys are not doing this the right way. It's not doing
Wow.
justice to what the system is supposed to be.
I love late night cable TV when they show British Parliament questions of the Prime Minister.
Yeah.
And it's shouting and they're heckling and the Prime Minister is doing this live on the fly Q&A, which I love.
Yeah.
And it's so messy and cacophonous, and yet it's also sharp because an idea has to be able to handle all these bullets flying at it. But if it
Yeah.
can, then everybody goes, well, then we should probably do it.
Right. And that's the way it's supposed to work, but it doesn't seem to work that way because people aren't really, and this is a small level, but even at a larger national level, people aren't really talking to each other. They're just shouting at each other. And that's, I think when you look at that other systems of government or even American government in the past, people were much better at listening. You fight it out and then you say, okay, your idea survived. We'll all agree to move on and move forward.
So now you're head of research, minority research,
Yep.
which is not Japanese research.
Right. Which now
apparently.
I get is Republican research.
And then what happens?
So I was actually the party chair for about a month, which was interesting because the party chair left and they needed somebody to fill in. And eventually I decided, I can do all this behind the scenes stuff, but really, if we want more voices, I can keep empowering the people that currently exist, or I can just try to jump in there myself and be a leader. And so, I decided to run for office.
So you go down and you fill out a form. I want
Yeah.
to run for state legislator.
So the first time was incredibly naive. I think
How old are you?
Started, probably 28 at that point.
Are there other 28-year-old
26,
Japanese
actually, yeah.
women running for public office at this time?
There might have actually been one other.
Really?
I mean, Hawaii's got a lot of Asian Americans.
Yes.
So, but there was one other who was also around my age. But yeah, I started running, I think in probably about August or September for the November election. It was crazy. There was just no way that I was ever going to win.
Did you tell any friends, hey, I'm going to run for public office?
I did, and I had like a pretty decent, like I had my friends support me, which I mean, it's kind of a crazy thing to suddenly just say at 26.
And then you go out door to door
Yeah, you just start knocking on doors.
and saying, I'm running.
Hi, my name is Beth Fukumoto. I'm running for state representative. I'm just calling to see, or I'm just coming over to see if you have any questions, and that's it.
And people tell you, I assume, all kinds of stuff.
Oh, all kinds of stuff. Yeah.
Did you ever knock on a door and have somebody say something that you were like, that is I'm sure you've had just unbelievable encounters.
Oh, there have been some very strange ones. I mean, you run into all sorts of things. I mean, I had one person that threatened to shoot me for being on his doorstep, and I was like, oh wow, okay. So you've run into interesting characters. Yeah, people answer the door in their underwear. I mean, it's all kinds of crazy stuff. Yeah.
And so you start August, September, November election, and what happens?
I lost. So going in, we thought that we were going to win. All the polls were showing that I was ahead. Turns out I had done pretty well on election day, but I had lost in the absentee ballot vote. So
Why is that?
I think, well, I started in like August or September, and I was running against an incumbent, and I just think there wasn't enough time for name recognition.
Okay.
And the absentee ballots go out like maybe a month before the actual voting day. So
Yeah. So did you go back to your other,
I went back to my job. Yeah, so I was working at the legislature again.
kept doing that, then did you run again?
I did, yeah, and that was it took a while. I mean, once you running for public office is such an interesting experience that losing is so
Yeah.
public too, right? And not
Right.
everybody has that experience. So it took some time for me to decide, yeah, you know what, this is worth going at it again. But it was a different seat, and I was running against a different incumbent. And I was a couple years older, so
And you were running as a Republican
yes, yeah,
because
against a Democrat.
because of this. So you picked Republican because you were like there has to be more loyal opposition.
Yeah, and I think generally I'm pretty moderate, so I feel like depending on the state, I could be either way. My political views are very moderate and centrist. So for me, it was not that difficult of a decision either way. And so, but I really did feel like Republicans just needed a bigger voice, or more people needed voices in the legislature, and this was my best path to do that.
And then you ran again, and what happened?
And I won. And the incumbent that I beat was a 16-year incumbent, and her husband had had the seat for 10 years before her. So I think for me that kind of meant a lot, because it was the goal. The goal was to really shake things up. Nobody thought I was going to win. Everybody thought I was crazy for running against her. So to be able to win that seat was
And now you have an
rewarding.
office and you have a staff
yeah.
and you're a politician.
Yeah, which is sometimes still a little surprising sometimes.
Why?
I think when you're growing up and when you look at, I never would have considered running for office. When you're growing up and you look at politicians, you're like, oh, these people are crazy, or whatever it is. They're really powerful, or they're really smart, or you just have all these ideas. And I think maybe I'm still like at that age where I don't feel old enough to be doing this, but I know I am. And yeah.
Yeah. And you have an office and you have employees. And
Right, right.
What is the thing when you got into the job that you didn't know it would be like? What's the thing that most people don't know about what it's actually like to be a working politician?
I think even politicians don't always recognize that it's really about relationships, that the relational side of it is not necessarily bad. People always talk about backroom deals and this person voted yes on this because they liked that person or whatever it was. And certainly some of that is bad, but at some level it's just about building relationships, making sure that when you're sitting and talking to people, you're actually looking at you're across the aisle or within your own party, you're finding out where that person's perspective is and why they're suggesting what they're suggesting and what solution they're trying to put forward and what problem they're trying to fix. And then it's easier to like come up with things that you agree with if you take time to actually listen to the other person and form those relationships. So I think people don't always understand how important relationships are.
Fascinating. I remember you explaining to me there were policies where you would have voted one way, but your job is to represent
Yeah,
your people.
yeah, yeah.
Because everybody's always like, well, we need a politician who will. It seems like the modern election process is what does this person believe on all these issues?
Right, right.
And I remember you being like, no, you're representing your people.
Yeah.
So you vote. Do you then sometimes vote for things that you're against? Because you have to represent them.
Yeah, or vice versa. Just because at the end of the day, I think my job and the title representative comes from this idea, especially in the House, comes from this idea that you're empowered by the people that have elected you, and your job is to represent them. And so I have often found myself thinking, well, I don't actually know if this is a bad policy, but my district is calling me saying this is going to be terrible, and they feel like it's going to cost too much or whatever it is. And I know I'm their voice. That's my job. So I'm not my own voice.
Really?
Yeah.
And how do you think about, so you don't just speak your mind sometimes. You're like, I'm speaking the mind.
Right. Because I know I'm speaking for other people too. And that I think that's a responsibility that I feel like I have.
Yeah.
Is not just to speak for myself.
What is something that your district was completely for or against, and you were like, I cannot, but they're literally, they don't get it, or they don't see it, or they don't, or I'm just, has there been something where you were shocked or surprised or caught off guard by where they actually were?
I don't think I've been shocked or caught off guard.
Because you know them.
Yeah, I don't think at any point I've been like, whoa, I really didn't think that was going to happen. I think generally, I know the district that I ran in. It's where I grew up. I know
really?
these people.
You know these people?
Yeah, I know them. Yeah.
Now, when you see the larger, so you're a Republican state legislator, tell me about the larger Republican Party
Yeah.
in the larger states. What is that like for you to be a Republican now with the way things are?
Yeah, I mean, little did I know when I ran for office, and that this is the way things were going to go.
Well, can you give more detail to that?
Yeah.
How things were going to go?
I think,
I'm so excited to hear you talk about this.
Yeah. So I guess the background for me is I mentioned I am Japanese American, a woman, I'm a millennial, and all of those things suggest that I should not be a Republican, right? If you
Right.
look at the demographics of the party. And that's been such an interesting experience that I didn't know. I wouldn't have known that being in Hawaii, which is a majority minority state. There were Asian Americans in our party. There were women. There were some younger people. And so to get to know the national party better and to know that I actually am a very tiny minority in the larger party has been a very, very uncomfortable experience sometimes.
Really?
Yeah, yeah.
Because you find yourself around a table and you're thinking, I don't see it like this way at all.
Yeah, and you guys don't even know what I'm saying. Like sometimes I'll say things and just be like, "Oh, you guys, you don't even recognize the things that I'm saying right now."
Like what would be something that you've been saying for a while?
So one of the things in Hawaii that we talk about all the time, because we're a majority minority state, and Republicans don't do well with minorities, I think that explains a lot of the reason why the Hawaii legislature is so lopsided. We can't figure out how to win. So as the minority leader and as the leader of the Republicans, I came to the table and said, listen, we need to make sure that we're reaching out better, that we're actually taking a mindset that is a local mindset specific to Hawaii, and we're talking to people in a language that they listen to and understand that resonates. And interestingly, the pushback that I got, I had somebody get very, very angry at me, an older white male, very, very angry. And he just yelled at me and said, listen, Beth, we are the party of middle America. Our job is to take middle American values and to represent them in this state legislature. I don't care if the demographics don't fit. I went, oh my goodness. Wow.
Oh,
Yeah.
our job is to impose
Yeah.
something that isn't actually reflective of who these people are on them.
Right. And I just went,
And this is a older white man
yeah.
saying our job is to impose this on minorities.
Yeah, and I'm sure that's not what he thought he said. Like, if we were to go back and I was to say, hey, you said this, he'd be like, that's not what I meant. But I knew what he meant. And it hit me in a way that I had felt that, even though here I am the leader of Republicans in the House, it's something that I had felt nationally and locally. Just even when I was present in a room, that what I said mattered less. And nobody had ever articulated it, but as soon as it was out of his mouth, I went, oh, that's why we're losing. You actually believe this.
Wow.
Yeah.
What has the presidential primary been like for you?
Yeah.
When you started watching the debates
Yeah.
as an actual working politician, how much, for those of us at home watching the debates, how much of that is what actually it's like to represent people and make policy and lead and
Oh, yeah.
what's that? How do you sit? Do you sit home and watch it?
Oh, yes.
Do you throw things and yell, or are you like
I yell
just
a lot.
Do you really?
Oh, I do. Yeah, I think when the process started, and and especially Donald Trump and Ted Cruz, really, people started looking at them being like, oh, they'll never win. So many Republicans nationally were telling me at these larger events, because I'm integrated with the people that are also trying to change the party nationally. And so we're going to these events and they're saying, oh, these guys are never going to win. Like the moderate voice will win out. The reasonable voice is going to win out. And I'm looking at it going, no, I don't think so, because I know this party now and I know what I'm facing as a politician, and I know what voices I hear, and I think there's a really good chance that voice, the voice of fear and anger, I think that could win. And so we're starting out the presidential process and we're seeing the nominees jump in, and I'm thinking, oh, this is not looking good. But everybody else is saying, no, Jeb Bush is going to have it. Marco Rubio will take it. It's going to be fine. And slowly but surely, right? Like people start dropping out and I was like, oh, guys, this doesn't look good. And here we are. Yeah.
You saw this coming.
Oh, I feel like I did. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, and then is it recently you've publicly said what you think?
Yeah. Well, I think before the primaries really got started, I think back in around December, I started doing interviews because all of these different the media cycle has just been on these candidates, right? So we've been running this election for like a year, right? We all have been watching this for a long time. And news articles started popping up, specifically when Donald Trump said that he was going to create a Muslim registry, which as a Japanese American, I remember listening to thinking, makes me nervous because of Japanese internment. And
Sure.
This is sounding oddly similar to something that the U.S. government has done in the past that we sometimes like to forget. And
for people who aren't familiar with Japanese internment.
Okay. So basically, during World War II, the U.S. government decided, when Japan attacked Pearl Harbor, decided to start rounding up Japanese Americans in America. And in Hawaii, there weren't actually that many. There were so many Japanese Americans, and there were people and policies in place that sort of kept most people from internment. People that were in the continental U.S., many of them lost their businesses, lost their homes. They got picked up by the government and taken to various internment camps around the United States.
So you're Japanese, you have a family, you have a business, your kids are going to school. The U.S. government comes to your house, loads you into a truck, hauls you to a refugee camp.
Right.
And feeds you 3 meals a day, and you just have to...
Sets you up sometimes in like a horse stall, and these very small compartments that people just have to live in.
And the U.S. government did this for tens of thousands of Japanese.
Yes.
Who are American citizens.
Right. Many of whom were American citizens. So it's not unprecedented. People listen to something like a Muslim registry or whatever it is, and they think, oh, but the U.S. we have protections in place. No.
But we did this before in recent history.
Yeah.
And
very recent history, yes.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah. And that's terrifying. Like that kind of rhetoric is terrifying. Many people just said, well, he's just saying it to win. I don't care. That's not okay with me. And I remember being in DC. I was at a conference that was like a bipartisan conference, and I've been expressing to a number of the Republicans in other states, Republican legislators, that I'm concerned. And those of us that are like 35 and under often hang out a lot. And so I'm with these guys, and we're at a bar, and I'm telling them, this Muslim registry thing is really bad. And I'm explaining all this stuff. And across they have Fox News or CNN on. And across
You might be in the wrong bar, but go
right?
on. you might maybe go to a different bar.
We're in DC, right? So
okay.
across the thing goes, Donald Trump says Japanese American internment might not have been a bad idea. And I just went, holy crap. And it made everybody shut up. I was like, you guys, I literally just said this is where this is going. And it was a terrifying moment for me. Yeah. I just thought, oh my gosh, this is our potential nominee, everyone. He just said that this might not be a bad idea. And so for me, I felt like that was the point at which, gosh, how can you not say something?
Right. Right.
As one of the few, as the youngest female caucus leader, as I think the only Asian American woman in a leadership position in the Republican Party. Like it just, I personally need to say something
Yeah.
because this is crazy. Yeah. So I think that was the moment where I was just like, okay.
So you started doing interviews? Or
Yeah. So I called the first thing I did because I was already in DC was I called the RNC. I called a few other people and just said,
the
hey,
Republican National Committee.
right, and said, hey, do you guys need a surrogate to talk about how we don't agree with this? And the response I got was, well, nobody's really asking us. People are more concerned about what he's saying about building the wall, and Speaker Ryan's going to say something, so it'll be okay. We don't need it. And I thought, oh gosh, guys, we need it. We need it.
Speaker Ryan is going to say something, so everything's going to be fine.
Everything's fine. I was just like, oh, okay, okay. You guys don't want a woman or like a Japanese American to maybe say something? No, I think we're okay. All right. And I don't think anybody even addressed like that specific. And it's true. Like Japanese American internment is a small thing, I guess, in the grand scheme of all the things Donald Trump has said. But yeah.
But the spirit behind it,
that was
or
yeah.
the way it opens the door
Right.
to such a litany of abuses,
Right.
and degradations of what it means to be human,
Right.
that it's not just the thing; it's a thing behind the thing.
Right.
Which is that's spiritually devastating,
Right.
among other things.
Right. And why I think that's the conversation that I've been trying to have with a lot of people in my own party is, don't we have to stop and take an assessment of why this guy is winning? I think we need to actually think about this.
Like, what is this a reflection of?
Yeah, because we're looking at it saying, well, it's because, people are angry. Okay, but maybe we should think about why they're angry and why we think the best way to fix their anger is to capitalize on it. Maybe we need to think about this better.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you speak out,
Yeah.
and then what happens?
So there were a series. I did an op-ed that NBC picked up online, and a few other things where I just said, hey, this is not what the Republican Party is supposed to be. There's more. There has to be more. This is the party that broke up the trusts. This is the party that ended child labor. This is the party that ended slavery. There is more. And that.
By the way, this is the party that ended slavery. Mm-hmm. Is a pretty fantastic. Like, I like to write books. That's a pretty good subtitle.
Right? Yeah, you're right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, why that?
Yeah.
Why you wouldn't own
Yeah.
actual human liberation movements that you
Right.
have been at the center of?
Right.
That my friend has this phrase, making molehills out of mountains. Like, you're actually sitting on gold,
Right.
and you manage to somehow not
Yeah.
let people know.
Right.
I was consulting with an organization that gets people drinking water around the world. They do lots and lots of different kinds of humanitarian work, but they had some stats on how many seconds, how many people they get drinking water every couple seconds. But they build houses, they do 1,000 other things. But I was like, how does everybody not know what you know what I mean?
Right.
How
Right.
have you managed
Right.
to obfuscate and
Right.
hide this extraordinary thing that you're doing?
Yeah.
What is going on here?
Yeah.
So, and then you get what? You get pushback? You get...
Yeah, and so the pushback was kind of slow. I had said at first, as a Japanese American, I don't know that I can support. I don't think I'm going to be able to vote for Donald Trump. This is before he won the nomination. And there were a few other things. I started talking about the party and how I thought the party could be different. And I'm getting decent feedback, but I'm also getting a lot of people start saying I'm going to leave the party. And
Who's going to leave?
me.
Oh.
The Beth Fukumoto is switching parties. That became like the grand narrative, if you will.
You critiquing from the inside
Right.
immediately became, oh, she's going to leave.
She's secretly a Democrat. Like, that's what it was. Is she's a Democrat. And I was like, well,
Do you have thick skin?
I do. I think I do. I don't know that I did like a few years ago, but I definitely think I do now.
And is that just like a muscle that you built up? Is that just from doing
Yeah.
it, or have you always been kind of badass?
No, I think I think that grows, right? Like there's only so many times you can let things like really injure you, right?
Yes. And part of your
Yeah.
job is people just feel free to say whatever they're thinking.
Right, right. People are always criticizing something, so you kind of gotta know when you're gonna let yourself take. You have to be able to decide this is not true. I'm gonna put that aside.
When people say things, do you ever get something stuck in your head on repeat that somebody said about you? Are you ever
Yeah.
like trying to go to bed at night and you're just like some person said da 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 and you're just
I've gotten better. I think in the past, yeah. But in the last couple years, I think I think a lot of my experiences in the past and getting into politics really young has really helped especially this last year, which has been rough with the presidential cycle. It's made me pretty tolerant of that. I can sleep at night.
oh, interesting. So it's literally just
Yeah.
over time
Yeah,
you've gotten
yeah.
better.
It's just built up over time.
What is so now I know you've spoken about something about the very nature of American political process
Yeah,
is broken at some fundamental level.
yeah.
How do you analyze that, or what would you say about that?
I think when we're looking at this particular cycle, you're looking at Bernie Sanders did, and it looks like he's probably definitely lost, right? It's unclear if he's accepted that, but I think he's lost. But he came as an independent, right, and
Yeah.
into the party and really almost took over, and in many places, including in Hawaii, has taken over local parties or people that are
Did you
with
see
him
that coming?
have.
Was that surprising to you, or did that make sense?
No, that made sense too, I
Yeah.
think. And then Donald Trump too, being an outsider, right? This is the year of the outsider.
Yes.
And while I think the outsiders have come from the extremes of both parties. I would love to see a centrist outsider. We
Oh,
don't have one of
interesting.
those yet, but the outsiders have kind of come from the extremes, but I think that's because people are so tired of establishment and this sort of binary system that we have, where you
Yes.
can only pick a Republican or a Democrat, and it in a world where you can customize everything,
Oh my
this
word,
just
that
doesn't
was
make
going to
any
be one of my
sense.
questions.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, there should be a spectrum of where you are on the political, right? I mean, there should be a political spectrum, not like an R or a D, and that's all you have.
The yes, because you go to the store and you want the purple sweater. I don't know why you're buying a purple sweater, and you're a
Yeah.
medium, and they don't have it in a medium. You can go to a different store, but at
Right.
some point, unless you're like really hardcore, at the second or third, or maybe even the first, you're like, okay, apparently I'm not going to get the purple sweater medium.
Right.
Now you just Google purple sweater medium,
Right.
and you get it.
Right.
So the idea that in the fundamental way we
Yeah.
arrange and govern ourselves, I would just have this or this, when I can get every variation of purple, size, polyester, cashmere,
Right.
in everything else in life.
Yeah.
And that if I go with this or that, if I go with this, there's a whole bunch of other stuff I have to take with it that I think is crazy. And the same on the other side.
Yeah.
It seems to me, which I would love you to intelligently help me understand, because I just sort of have the outside, is that this system, this binary system, doesn't work, and in order for something new to come, the present thing has to literally be blown up.
Yeah.
It almost has to be
Yeah.
like bombed from the inside,
Yeah.
so that out of the dust
Right.
can come something like new, but like really new, not just change new, but like transition new.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know for me and some of my colleagues earlier this year, we really looked at the way things were going and said, what, the whole thing might just have to burn down. And
you
we might
really?
have to rebuild it. Yeah. I mean, that might be the only way. And I think we're well on our way to that happening. I think there are people locally in Hawaii that would say that I'm probably helping to burn it down, and I'm that wasn't the goal.
Oh, but we do love burning things down, don't
but
we?
yes, I mean, you get to make something new then.
Oh, really?
And
That is a
better,
specific
right?
accusation of you.
Oh, very much
That
so.
you are like,
That I set out to destroy this party. That was my goal, which was not my goal. But
in a lot of other areas, the person, the heretic, or the person who's saying out, it appears as though they're
Yeah.
saying out to destroy it, is actually the person who is most faithful. because this word radical comes from the Latin radix, which means root. That what appears to be radical is actually the return to the root. That the most traditional person is often the person appears as though they're trying to blow the whole thing up,
Right.
because they actually believe in the initial impulse.
Yeah.
We actually should have a better life together.
Right.
And I'm not blowing this up because I'm trying to destroy it. I just know that that's the way that we get at
Yeah. And
what
I
this
think,
could be.
yeah, there's so many layers of just the way of establishment. There's so many layers.
What's an everyday example that we all like? What's something that government is supposed to do that there's so many layers of bloated, fat red tape or whatever? What's something that you see regularly that's just completely insane that could be fixed with a very sensible solution?
I think this whole idea of taxation and debt, we see at a national level, like we're shutting down the government based on, in theory, like Republicans are shutting down the government because they're concerned about the national debt, or they're upset about certain taxes or what. But when you really, the economy, if we really sat down and looked at it and all looked at it from a very reasonable perspective and said, okay, we know that some people are going to have to give a little bit more to make it fair, and some people don't have enough, so we're going to have to make sure that they get more. And we sat down and looked at it instead of through the lenses of Republicans and Democrats and, well, we signed this pledge to never increase taxes, and we signed this pledge to make sure that we're increasing welfare, whatever it is. If we just took away all the pledges and the statements that we made and sat down and just looked at the economy together, it's fixable.
Is it really?
It's fixable. It's so gridlocked because everybody's made all of these statements and pledges and layers and layers and layers of policies that
that's so fascinating.
are abstract instead of looking at it practically.
But actually, you who are on the inside look at it. That movie Dave. Did you ever see that movie Dave?
I didn't.
About
No.
this guy who looks like the president, and then he steps in to be the president because the president goes down. And so he's faking to be president.
Yeah.
So he brings his friend, who's an accountant, I think it is, to the White House. And his friend looks at the national numbers and has some line like, if I ran my business like this,
Yeah.
I could never make it.
Right.
There's this great line where this like guy from whatever state
Right.
looks at the whole thing and says, this could. So you actually have hope.
Oh, it's fixable. I mean, if everybody would just decide to be practical and listen to each other and go, I think, and I think, like, and maybe this is me being naive, but I feel like if we had a decent plan, if politicians were actually working together and we went back to the American public and just said, hey, listen, you guys over here, you're going to have to give a little bit more, but when you do, this is why.
Yeah.
This is where it's going to go. We're going to be able to get out of debt. We're going to be able to do this. These are the goals. I actually think most Americans would say, yeah, okay, I'm willing to pay a little bit more there. I'm willing to cut a little bit here, just because I guess I just believe in the goodness of like the American people.
Well, the greatest moments in history ask not what your country can do for
Right.
you.
Right.
People actually love the idea of sacrifice.
Yeah.
They look
yeah.
back on that with nostalgia.
Right.
Like, remember when everybody had to chip
Right.
in for the war effort?
Right.
Those are the moments that get they become
Yeah.
icons, or they get rich. They get held up as like, this was
Yeah.
us at our best.
Yep.
I actually wonder if in the future world, politicians will run and people are like, well, what will you do for me? Like all those town hall meetings, something like,
Right.
what will you do? There'll be this lady who's like, I hurt my elbow bowling. President Obama, what will you do for me?
Yeah.
This stuff like President Obama would be like, well, I'll be there on Thursday. Can you make Thursdays? I'll be there on Thursday.
Right.
But if there was a politician who came along and just said, I'm not going to make one promise.
Yeah.
And actually, I'm interested in what you can give.
Yeah.
And here are my demands of you,
Yeah.
that you are willing to stretch a little
Yeah.
and you are willing to sacrifice a little. And I'm not owned by anybody because the only way forward is all of us are going to hurt a little. And on the other side, it's going to be awesome.
Yeah.
Like, I
Yeah.
wonder if it'll be the opposite of, I'm going to do this for this group and this. It'll be,
Right.
I have zero promises.
Right.
You might actually get hosed for the next 3 years.
Right. Right.
There's
Right.
always a chance that year 4, 5,
Right,
and 6,
right.
we all might actually be in some new place.
And I think that's something that would resonate, right? It would with me because I'd be like, you know what, you're probably telling the truth.
Right.
You're the first
Like
person.
a TV
Yeah.
ad that's like, it's about to get a lot worse.
Right.
And then, hey, there's a chance it could get better. Vote
Right.
for me.
Right. Yeah.
I would resonate so fast.
Yeah.
I would be like, that person, I'm in.
Yeah, me too.
So a lot of like all of this giant debt stuff.
Yeah.
So I also wonder, because what we've seen with the past 8 years is it seems like oh, President Obama has this idea, this,
Yeah.
and then you have no, no,
Yeah.
no,
Yeah.
which you can kind of do in two-party. But if you had 7 parties,
Right.
it would be like,
Right.
okay, what's the problem?
Right.
Okay, let's fix it.
Right.
You don't have as much of like, well, we're the part. Like if you're the 7th party and you're like, well, we're just going to say no, people will be like, well, the 6 of us then will do it.
Right. Right. Yeah, I think if we broke out of that binary system,
Yeah.
really, then it would make things a lot less gridlocked. It would. Yeah.
Because the sort of that giant, we're just going to stand in the
Yeah.
way of all.
Yeah.
People will be like, okay, fine. You guys you can go sit and have coffee.
Right.
We're actually going to like
We're going to
lead.
get this done. Yeah, and I think that's been my biggest frustration with politics now and being involved in politics at this moment in history is so much of it is theater. And so many times we'll be on the floor and people will criticize me, not for my votes, but because, well, you didn't tell the Democrats that they were bad for this reason, or you didn't yell enough, right? You didn't say
You've been
no
told that?
loud enough. Oh, all the time.
You've been told you didn't yell enough.
You didn't yell enough. I like this other guy because he's always yelling and he's always telling them why they suck. And okay, but has he passed any bills?
So you've literally been told it's not enough to get stuff done.
No.
You didn't in the process degrade the other side.
Right. It is because you didn't attack Democrats enough, you are not standing up for Republicans. And I just, how? Why is attacking them have anything to do with who we are? Like it, but that's what's demanded now.
Oh
And,
my word. It is insane as some
oh yeah.
as it appears.
Oh, it's as crazy as it appears. And that's why, like, for me, our current presidential nominee is not surprising because I know that people regularly demand. It doesn't matter if the policies are there. They want the rhetoric. That's what people want.
You at the grassroots level watching how the system works, this system was bound to produce that.
Right. This is what the party wanted, was somebody with the words. It doesn't even matter if, and especially because you have a lot of conservatives getting on board with Donald Trump, and he's not has not proven to have any conservative policies, but conservatives
I don't think he's proven to have any policies.
Well,
But
correct,
anyway.
yeah, correct. And so, but when you confront them with that, they say, well, but I like that he wants to ban Muslims. Okay, but how,
That's not an answer or a solution to anything.
Yeah, you're just like, okay. But that's what people wanted, is somebody just to say, we're going to build a wall. Okay, like that's all people wanted. They didn't want any more than that. And so to have a politician finally come along and say, you know what, I'm not even going to bother with any of the actual real stuff. I'm just going to say what people want to hear. This system was going to produce this nominee.
So it's almost like it had to produce this in order to blow up at such a level that you could then make so fantastically
and it's been
strange.
Years of me watching this system going, oh, this is going to go bad. And now here's our nominee. And I think as he got there, I really had to make the decision, is this worth talking about or not? Like, should I just be quiet and not say anything and just hope that this passes? Or is it time to be like, hey, guys?
No, I'm here to tell you on behalf of all my peoples.
Yeah.
No, you have to speak up.
I couldn't not say anything. It was supposed to be me. That's how I felt, is I'm here for no reason at all if I don't say something right now. So, yeah.
So great. So you set out to be an English professor, and now you're being accused of blowing up a political party.
Right. Yeah. It's very
That's not bad.
Yeah.
For your first part of your life.
Yeah. It'll give me something to write about, maybe.
Have you considered writing out some of your vision, your ideas, your thoughts about all this?
Yeah, I think what I'm working on this year is at the beginning of the year, once I expected Donald Trump was going to be our nominee, I thought, you know what, I'm going to write basically a memoir of what it was like to be in the Republican Party as a minority millennial female in this moment in history, because yikes. And how how I think there's still hope, because that's what it is
Yeah.
there's still so much hope
Yeah, I pick that up from you.
that people don't see it, and I think within the current process and people that are in the current parties, maybe they don't want any of what I'm selling. Got it. But people outside the
People do.
parties, there's a lot of people. I mean, and there are way more people outside the political parties than inside the parties, right?
Right.
So the people outside are the people I care about, because politics is something good at its heart. It's something we can do to
Absolutely.
make life better.
Our shared life together. How we
Yeah,
organize our
and I
shared life
love that
together.
one. I loved that podcast and that line. Because yeah, it's something good, and but it can only be good if we get more people in it that are not in it right now, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I I'm so inspired by you.
Thank
It's
you.
just fantastic. And
Yeah.
ladies and gentlemen, Beth Fukumoto, I everybody remember. I think everybody should remember your name,
Thank
because I
you.
think you
Thank you.
you give us great hope. I'm fascinated in how once a preacher, always a preacher. There's this great section in the New Testament in the book of Romans about how hope comes out of character, which comes out of perseverance.
Yeah.
That hope is not a like a nice happy feeling that you have in the moment. Hope is something that's formed in you. It's something that, because you kept going,
Yeah.
you discover down the road that you're actually hopeful, but it's a hope that got earned. And what's interesting to me is you've been in the slog, the day-to-day grind of how government actually works. And what it did is it didn't make you more cynical, it made you more hopeful.
Yeah.
And that's what I
Yeah.
find so counterintuitive, and what I've seen in so many different people is they were down in the pure undiluted slog of it, and they came out going, actually, we could do this.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's so compelling to me.
Yeah, we have this. We're in Hawaii right now. If anybody ends up Googling Beth Fukumoto, they're gonna pull up a whole list of articles about me blowing up the party, probably. But we're going through this sort of regeneration in Hawaii right now, and maybe it's not regeneration, maybe it's just destruction. But I like to think that we're creating something. And there was this moment in our recent convention. I got up there and I said what I thought about Donald Trump. I said, I think he's a racist. I think he's a sexist. And I don't think that he represents what our party's values should be. And gosh, the boos. I actually got booed. And in that moment, I had so much hope for the party, because I thought, you know what? I remember standing there looking at all these people thinking, there are so much more people outside that don't represent what you guys think right here. And hopefully in this moment, this gets out enough that people start to get engaged and they go, oh, wow, this party is going the wrong way and we got to get involved. And I hope that I can inspire people to be more hopeful.
Oh, you're fantastic. Thank you so much
Thank you
for coming on the RobCast.
Thank you.
And down the road, we'll have to have you back to tell us what's
See how
next.
it goes.
Yes. All right. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
All right, everybody. Grace and peace.